Captain Elena Vasquez stared at the view screen as her ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The Kepler 442 system spread before them like scattered diamonds against black velvet. Dozens of asteroids drifted in lazy orbits around a pale yellow star. Most people would see nothing special here. Just rocks floating in space, but Elena knew better. This system was home to the Whisper Folk. "Beginning standard approach, Captain," said Lieutenant Torres from the pilot seat. She was young, maybe 25, with bright eyes that reminded Elena of her own daughter back on Earth. "Take it slow," Elena replied. "We don't want to scare them." Dr. James Chen looked up from his equipment. The tall, thin scientist had joined Elena's crew 6 months ago. He specialized in alien languages, though most people thought his work was useless. After all, how many alien species actually wanted to talk to humans? "The files say they're not really intelligent," Chen said, adjusting his translation computer. "Just animals that learn to use simple tools." Elena frowned. She had read the same files. Every major alien government said the Whisper Folk were primitive. Too stupid to matter. Too weak to worry about. For 2,000 years, the galaxy had ignored them. "We'll see about that," Elena said. The first asteroid came into view. It looked ordinary from a distance, just gray rock tumbling through space. But as they got closer, Elena saw the truth. Tiny lights flickered across the asteroid's surface. Geometric patterns that definitely did not occur in nature. "My God," Chen whispered. "Look at those structures." The Whisper Folk had carved their homes directly into the rock. Smooth tunnels wound through the asteroid like veins. Transparent domes covered garden areas where strange plants grew in the vacuum of space. And everywhere, small figures moved with purpose. Elena had seen pictures of the Whisper Folk before, but seeing them in person was different. They stood about 3 feet tall with thin bodies and large heads. Their skin was almost see-through, and patterns of light danced beneath the surface. They moved in groups, working together to tend their gardens and maintain their homes. "They're beautiful," Torres said softly. A group of Whisper Folk noticed the human ship approaching. Instead of running away, they gathered in a large circle. The light patterns under their skin began to pulse in unison. The pulses spread from one individual to another, until the entire group glowed like a living constellation. "Are they trying to communicate?" Elena asked. Chen was already working at his console. "I'm detecting subsonic vibrations. Very low frequency. Most species can't even hear sounds that low." He paused, looking confused. "The patterns are incredibly complex. This isn't random noise. This is language." "I thought they just made clicking sounds," Torres said. "That's what everyone thought," Chen replied. "But those clicks might just be background noise. The real communication is happening below our normal hearing range." Elena watched the Whisper Folk continue their light display. They seemed excited, almost eager. "Can you translate what they're saying?" "Not yet. But Captain, this changes everything. If they have a complex language, then they're definitely intelligent. Much more intelligent than anyone realized." The ship's communication system crackled to life. "Human vessel, this is Vorthak Patrol Ship Iron Fist. You are approaching a restricted system." Elena sighed. The Vorthak were one of the galaxy's major powers. They looked like 8-foot-tall lizards and had the personality to match. Everything was either a threat to eliminate or a resource to exploit. "This is Captain Vasquez of the research vessel Endeavor," Elena replied. "We have proper permits for scientific study." "Understood, human. Be aware that this system contains no intelligent life. Only primitive animals. Do not interfere with them." Elena looked at Chen, who was still working on the translation. The Whisper Folk below continued their light patterns, now covering 3 different asteroids. It looked like they were having a conversation across the vacuum of space. "Right," Elena said into the communicator. "No intelligent life." "Got it." The Vorthak ship moved away, continuing its patrol. Elena was glad to see it go. "The Vorthak had a habit of solving problems with plasma cannons, Captain," Chen said, his voice shaking with excitement. "I'm starting to get fragments of their language. They're not just talking to each other. They're talking about mathematics, quantum mechanics, things that shouldn't be possible for a primitive species." Maria Santos, the ship's chief engineer, joined them on the bridge. She was a small woman with graying hair and hands that were always dirty from fixing something. Her grandmother had been forced from her home when corporations wanted the land for mining. Maria understood what it meant to be dismissed and forgotten. "What's all the excitement about?" Maria asked. Elena pointed at the view screen. More asteroids had joined the conversation. The light patterns were spreading throughout the entire system like a vast web of communication. We might have discovered that the galaxy's been wrong about the whisper. Folk for 2,000 years, Elena said. Maria studied the patterns. Those lights aren't random. Look, you can see geometric shapes, mathematical sequences. She paused. My grandmother's people used to communicate with light signals across long distances. Before the corporations came and destroyed everything. Chen's translation computer beeped. I've got something. It's fragmentary, but listen to this. He played back a computer-generated voice speaking in accented English. Warning. Large object. Coming from outside. Stars will. Danger to all. The bridge fell silent. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. They're trying to warn someone, Torres said. But who? And about what? Chen worked frantically at his console. The linguistic patterns suggest they've been repeating this message for long years. Maybe decades. They're broadcasting a warning to anyone who will listen. Elena thought about all the reports she had read. The Whisper folk were considered too primitive for normal diplomatic contact. Their system was occasionally patrolled, but no one ever bothered to actually talk to them. Everyone just assumed they had nothing important to say. Chen, how long will it take you to improve the translation? Helena asked. Maybe a few days if they cooperate. The mathematical references might help. Math is universal. Elena made her decision. We're staying. Torres, find us a safe parking orbit. Maria, start setting up communication equipment. We're going to have a proper conversation with the Whisper folk. Captain, Torres said carefully, the Vorthak told us not to interfere. The Vorthak told us there was no intelligent life here, Elena replied. They were wrong about that. Maybe they're wrong about other things too. Over the next several hours, Chen worked with the Whisper folk to establish basic communication. They were surprisingly patient teachers, repeating concepts and using different approaches when the humans didn't understand. It became clear that they had been hoping for contact with other species for a very long time. By the end of the day, Chen had managed to establish a working vocabulary. The Whisper folk called themselves the Lumthara, which meant light weavers in their language. They had been watching the stars for generations, measuring and calculating things that human science was only beginning to understand, and they had discovered something terrifying approaching from outside the galaxy. Captain, Chen said as the day shift ended, I think we need to contact Earth immediately. What the Lumthara are telling us, if they're right, it could change everything. Elena nodded, but she was already thinking ahead. If the Lumthara were right about a cosmic threat, and if they had been trying to warn the galaxy for decades, then humanity might be the first species to actually listen. The question was, what would they do with that knowledge? Outside the ship, the Lumthara continued their light patterns, spreading their urgent message across the dark between the stars. A message that finally, after so many years of silence, had found someone willing to hear. 3 days later, Dr. Chen had made incredible progress with the Lumthara language. He spent most of his time talking with Elder HFY, the oldest and wisest of the Lightweavers. HFY's body glowed with more complex patterns than the others, swirling designs that seemed to show the movement of stars themselves. The translation is getting clearer, Chen told Captain Vasquez as they prepared for another communication session. But what they're telling us is almost impossible to believe. Elena watched the main view screen as their shuttle approached HFY's asteroid. The Lumthara had invited them to visit their home, something they apparently had never done for any other species. Elena felt honored but also nervous. She was about to see how an alien civilization really lived. The asteroid's interior was nothing like Elena had expected. Instead of rough caves, smooth corridors led to large chambers filled with what could only be described as living technology. Crystalline structures grew from the walls like plants, pulsing with the same bioluminescent patterns as the Lumthara themselves. Elder HFY met them at the entrance. Up close, Elena could see that the patterns under the Lumthara's skin were incredibly complex. They shifted and changed like a living computer screen. When HFY communicated, the patterns flowed in waves that matched the subsonic sounds Chen's equipment picked up. Welcome, Chen teacher. HFY's translated voice came through their speakers. Welcome, Elena leader. We have waited many cycles for ones who would listen. Elder HFY, Elena said, speaking slowly so the translation system could keep up. We want to understand your warning. You said something dangerous is coming. HFY's patterns shifted to what Chen had learned meant deep concern. The elder led them to a large chamber where dozens of Lumthara worked with the crystal formations. The crystals seemed to be showing star maps, but not like any Elena had ever seen. We read the songs of space, HFY explained. The vibrations that travel between stars. The movements of things that cannot be seen. Chen studied the crystal displays with fascination. Captain, I think they're detecting gravitational waves. Ripples in space-time itself. But their equipment is biological, not mechanical. A younger Lumthara named Kelvin joined the conversation. Kelvin's patterns moved faster than HFY's, showing excitement and urgency. The dark storm comes, Kelvin said through the translator. From the empty space between star rivers. It devours light and makes stars sick. Elena felt confused. Star rivers? Galaxies, Chen said quietly. They call galaxies star rivers. HFY moved to the largest crystal formation. It showed a three-dimensional map of the Milky Way galaxy, but with additional information that human science had never detected. Dark currents flowed between the spiral arms, and one massive disturbance was approaching from outside. We have watched this storm for 50 of your years, HFY explained. It comes from the vast dark between star rivers. When it touches our star river, many suns will die. Many worlds will become cold stone. Elena stared at the display. If the Lumthara were right, they were looking at a galaxy-wide extinction event. How long until it arrives? 18 months, Kelvin replied. Maybe less. The storm moves faster than we first calculated. Chen was taking detailed readings of everything he could. Captain, their biological sensors are detecting things our best equipment can't even see. If they're right about this dark matter storm, we tried to warn the tall, sharp-teeth people, HFY said sadly. Elena realized they meant the Vorthak. We tried to warn the metal sellers. That would be the Zephyrians. None would listen. They said we were too small to understand star songs. Elena felt anger growing in her chest. The Lumthara had been trying to save the galaxy for 50 years, and everyone had ignored them because they looked primitive. We need to get this information to Earth immediately, Elena said. Our scientists need to verify these readings. HFY's patterns showed what Chen had learned meant gratitude. You will carry our warning to others, even though we are small? Especially because you are small, Elena replied firmly. In human culture, we have a saying, the size of someone's voice doesn't determine the value of their words. Over the next week, the Endeavour crew worked closely with the Lumthara to gather as much data as possible. Elena sent detailed reports to Earth, including Chen's translation protocols and complete sensor readings from the biological crystals. The response from Earth was immediate and alarming. Within days, Elena received a priority message from Admiral Harrison, the head of Earth Space Command, Captain Vasquez. Harrison's recorded message began, Our scientists have confirmed the Lumthara calculations using our most advanced computer models. The dark matter storm is real, and it's larger than they initially estimated. We're calling an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Elena felt both vindicated and terrified. The Lumthara had been right all along. But when the Galactic Council meeting took place, Elena watched in horror as the other species dismissed the human evidence. Admiral Krexter of the Vorthak Empire actually laughed when the human ambassador presented the Lumthara's warnings. Humans have been infected by primitive superstitions, Krextar said. His reptilian features twisted in amusement. These asteroid rats understand nothing of cosmic forces. Their brains are too small for real science. Minister Velos of the Zephyrian Trade Federation was more polite, but equally dismissive. While we appreciate human enthusiasm for lesser species, we cannot base galactic policy on the chittering of animals. Our own scientists have detected no such threat. Elena wanted to scream. She was watching the galaxy's leaders ignore a warning that could save billions of lives, all because they refused to believe that a small, overlooked species could understand something they missed. The situation got worse when Elena returned to the Kepler 442 system. A Vorthak battlecruiser was waiting for her. Captain Vasquez, Admiral Krextar's voice crackled over the communication system. By order of the Galactic Council, this system has been declared a contamination zone. You will withdraw immediately and have no further contact with the primitives. Elena looked at her crew. Torres was gripping her console so hard her knuckles were white. Maria was muttering angry words in Spanish. Chen looked like someone had just told him his life's work was meaningless. Admiral, Elena replied carefully, We're conducting legitimate scientific research. You are spreading panic based on alien fantasies, Krextar shot back. The Council has voted. Humans will withdraw from this system, or face expulsion from the Galactic Concordant. Elena knew what that meant. Earth depended on alien technology and trade routes. Being expelled from the Concordant would set human civilization back centuries. But as she looked at the asteroid where HFY and the other Lumthara lived, Elena thought about all the warnings they had tried to send. 50 years of desperate attempts to save a galaxy that wouldn't listen. Admiral, Elena said slowly, we need 24 hours to pack our equipment. Granted, but if any human ship remains in this system after that time, it will be destroyed. The communication ended. Elena sat in her captain's chair, feeling the weight of an impossible decision. Follow orders and abandon the Lumthara to their fate, or risk humanity's place in the galaxy to protect a species everyone else had written off. Chen broke the silence. Captain, I just received a message from Elder HFY. They want to give us something before we leave. Elena nodded grimly. Put them through. HFY's pattern showed deep sadness when the translation came through. We understand, Elena Leader. Your people need you more than we do. But we give you this gift. Complete star song maps of the coming storm. Maybe someday your people will find a way to use them. Elena felt tears in her eyes. Even facing abandonment, the Lumthara were still trying to help. Elder HFY, Elena said, her voice shaking with emotion. I want you to know something. Not all humans are leaving. Torres looked at her in surprise. Maria raised an eyebrow. Chen leaned forward with interest. Captain? Torres asked. Elena stood up, her decision made. Send a message to Earth. Tell them that Captain Elena Vasquez of the research vessel Endeavor respectfully requests permission to remain in the Kepler 442 system as an independent observer. They'll never approve that, Maria said. Elena smiled grimly. Then I guess we'll be operating without approval. President Sarah Kim stared at the emergency report on her desk. Captain Vasquez had officially requested permission to remain in the Kepler 442 system, despite direct orders from the Galactic Council to withdraw. Worse, early intelligence suggested that other human ships were heading toward the system to join her. Madam President, General Morrison said from across the meeting table, we cannot allow this to continue. The Vorthak Empire has already threatened to remove us from the Galactic Concordant if we don't control our people. Sarah rubbed her temples. Earth was still recovering from the Centauri trade wars 3 years ago. Human colonies needed alien technology to survive. If Earth was expelled from the Concordant, millions of people would suffer. What about the scientific evidence? Dr. Rebecca Walsh, Earth's chief scientist, spoke up. Our computers confirmed the Lumthara calculations. The dark matter storm is real. No one else believes that, General Morrison replied. The Vorthak say we've been fooled by primitive aliens. The Zephyrians think we're making up data to gain political advantage. Sarah looked at the recording of Captain Vasquez's last message. The woman looked tired but determined. Behind her, the bridge of the Endeavor showed a crew that had clearly made their choice. Madam President, Vasquez had said in the recording, I know this puts Earth in a difficult position, but I cannot abandon a species that has been trying to save the galaxy for 50 years. If that makes me a rebel, then so be it. Sarah had known Elena Vasquez for 10 years. The woman was stubborn, but she wasn't crazy. If Vasquez believed the Lumthara were worth protecting, there had to be a good reason. General Morrison, Sarah said finally, how many ships have joined Captain Vasquez? Morrison looked uncomfortable. 17 so far. A mix of converted cargo vessels, decommissioned military ships, and private craft. Most of the crews are volunteers who resigned from official service. They're calling themselves the Independent Human Defense Fleet, Dr. Walsh added, led by Captain Vasquez but with no official Earth government backing. Sarah made her decision. Send a message to Captain Vasquez. Tell her that while Earth cannot officially support her actions, we will not actively stop volunteers from joining her cause. General Morrison looked shocked. Madam President, that's essentially supporting a rogue military operation. No, Sarah replied firmly. That's giving individuals the right to make their own moral choices. Sometimes that's what being human means. Meanwhile, in the Kepler 442 system, Elena watched as more ships arrived each day. The ragtag fleet was nothing like a proper military force, but it had something more important: determination. Commander Jake Miller brought his converted cargo ship Freedom into formation with the other vessels. His crew included former military personnel who had resigned rather than abandoned the Lumthara. Captain Vasquez, Miller's voice came over the communication system. My ship isn't much to look at, but we're here to stay. Elena smiled. The same message had come from dozens of other captains over the past week. Humans from all over Earth's territory were converging on this forgotten system, ready to protect a species most of the galaxy considered worthless. Dr. Chen had been working around the clock with Elder Zephi to understand more about the approaching storm. The Lumthara's biological sensors were incredibly sophisticated, but they needed human engineering to turn their warnings into actionable defense plans. Captain, Chen reported during the morning briefing, the Lumthara have shown me something amazing. They can actually predict where enemy ships will move by reading gravitational disturbances. Maria Santos looked up from her engineering reports. That could give us a huge advantage in any fight. If we know where they're going before they do, we might actually have a chance, Elena finished. The first test of their defenses came 3 days later. A Zephyrian mining fleet approached the system's outer edge. These weren't military ships, but they carried enough firepower to destroy the asteroid colonies if they wanted to. Attention human vessels, came the transmission from the lead Zephyrian ship. By order of the Trade Federation, we are here to relocate the native population for their own safety. You will not interfere. Elena knew what relocation for safety meant. The Zephyrians would move the Lumthara to overcrowded refugee camps while strip mining the trilithium from their home asteroids. Zephyrian fleet, Elena replied. The Lumthara have not requested relocation. This is their home and we are here to protect it. You have no legal authority here, human. Stand aside or be moved aside. Elena looked at her tactical display. 17 human ships against 8 Zephyrian vessels. The odds weren't terrible, but a real fight would mean casualties on both sides. Elder Zephi, Elena said into her communicator. Can your people help us track the Zephyrian ships? Yes, Elena leader, came the translation. We see their path songs. They move like frightened creatures testing for weakness. Over the next hour, the human fleet used Lumthara, sensing to stay one step ahead of the Zephyrian probes. Every time a mining ship tried to approach an asteroid, human vessels appeared to block them. The Zephyrians found themselves constantly outmaneuvered by opponents who seemed to know their every move. Finally, the Zephyrian commander gave up. This is not worth the trouble, he transmitted to Elena. But this matter is not finished. Elena knew he was right. The Zephyrians would be back with more ships and better plans. But for now, the Lumthara were safe. The reprieve lasted exactly 1 week. Admiral Krextar arrived with a full Vorthak battle fleet. 12 heavy cruisers and 40 smaller vessels surrounded the Kepler 442 system like a steel net. Elena's small fleet was hopelessly outnumbered. Human rebels. Krextar's voice boomed across all frequencies. You have violated the direct orders of the Galactic Council. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Elena gathered her captains for an emergency meeting. The faces on her screen showed fear, but also determination. These people had given up everything to be here. I won't lie to you, Elena said. We can't win a straight fight against the Vorthak fleet. But we don't have to win. We just have to make them pay a price they're not willing to accept. Captain Sarah Torres, Elena's own daughter who had arrived the previous day commanding the fast attack ship Defiant, spoke up. The Lumthara asteroid formations could work in our favor. If we use guerrilla tactics, hit and run, Commander Miller agreed. Make them fight for every kilometer. Elena nodded. The Lumthara can help us predict their movements. We use the asteroid field like a maze, force them to hunt us one ship at a time. Over the next several days, the Battle of Kepler 442 became a deadly game of cat and mouse. Human ships would strike quickly at isolated Vorthak vessels, then disappear into the asteroid field before reinforcements could arrive. The Lumthara's sensing abilities let the humans know exactly where every enemy ship was at all times. Dr. Chen worked with Elder Zephi to develop new tactical advantages. They discovered that the Lumthara could generate quantum disruption fields that would disable ship systems without destroying them completely. Elena ordered her fleet to use these weapons exclusively. Even in war, humans would try not to kill unnecessarily. This mercy had an unexpected effect. Young Vorthak crew members, seeing their disabled ships rescued by the same humans who had defeated them, began asking questions about what they were really fighting for. The battle reached its climax when Admiral Krextar ordered an orbital bombardment of a Lumthara nursery asteroid. The facility housed hundreds of young Lumthara who couldn't defend themselves. Captain Sarah Torres made a split-second decision. She flew the Defiant directly between the Vorthak guns and the nursery. Taking the full bombardment meant for the helpless children. Elena watched in horror as her daughter's ship burned and broke apart, sacrificing itself to save alien younglings. The image was broadcast across the galaxy by independent journalists who had been following the story. The sight of a human captain dying to protect alien children sparked something unexpected. Protests began on Vorthak worlds. Young Zephyrians demanded to know why their leaders were attacking a species that had never hurt anyone. And then, 2 weeks into the siege, the universe itself proved the Lumthara right. The dark matter storm's leading edge reached the Rigel system, exactly as Elder Zephi had predicted. Within hours, Rigel's star became unstable. The 7 planets in the system were bombarded by deadly radiation as their sun began to die. The news reached Admiral Krekstar as he prepared for a final assault on the human fleet. Elena could almost hear his shock over the communication system. "Impossible," Krekstar muttered. "The primitives. They were right." Elena felt no satisfaction in being proven correct. Billions of beings had just lost their homes because the galaxy's leaders had been too proud to listen to a small, overlooked species. "Admiral Krekstar," Elena transmitted. "Elder Zephi is standing by to share everything the Lumthara know about the storm. We can save lives if we work together." There was a long pause. When Krekstar finally responded, his voice had lost all its arrogance. "Human Captain," he said quietly, "I formally request Lumthara assistance in evacuating the threatened systems." Elena looked at Elder Zephi's image on her screen. The old Lumthara's patterns showed sadness for the suffering about to come, but also hope that finally someone was ready to listen. "Elder," Elena said, "will your people help them?" "We will help." Admiral Krekstar's request for help changed everything, but not quickly enough. Even as the Vorthak commander swallowed his pride, his government back on the homeworld was furious about the humiliation of their fleet. Within days, fresh orders arrived. Destroy the human rebels and prove Vorthak's strength to the galaxy. Elena watched the tactical display as new Vorthak ships jumped into the system. This wasn't just a battle fleet anymore. This was an armada designed to make an example of anyone who dared challenge galactic authority. 57 ships, reported Lieutenant Commander Hayes from the sensor station. Hayes had been a traffic controller on Earth before volunteering for Elena's fleet. Now he was tracking enough firepower to glass a planet. "Admiral Krekstar," Elena transmitted on a private channel, "you know we're right about the storm."
"Why are you doing this?"
Krekstar's reply came back heavy with resignation. "Captain Vasquez, I have my orders. The High Command believes that crushing your rebellion is more important than preparing for cosmic disasters." "I am sorry," Elena understood. Even when faced with extinction, some beings cared more about power than survival. The new battle began differently from the first one. The fresh Vorthak forces had studied human tactics and adapted. They moved in tight formations that were harder to separate. They used wide-area weapons that made hiding in the asteroid field more dangerous. Worse, the Zephyrian Trade Federation had quietly supplied them with enhanced shields designed to resist the Lumthara quantum disruption fields. The mercy weapons that humans preferred were becoming less effective. Dr. Chen worked desperately with Elder Zephi to find new solutions. The old Lumthara had grown visibly weaker during the fighting. The stress of war was taking a toll on someone who had lived for peace. "The star songs are becoming harder to read," Zephi admitted during one of their technical sessions. "Too much violence disturbs the natural harmonies." Elena felt guilty. The Lumthara were pacifists by nature, and she had brought war to their doorstep. But what choice did she have? Let them be destroyed by ignorance and greed? The answer came from an unexpected source. Captain Lisa Park, commanding the converted freighter New Soul, had been a merchant trader before joining Elena's fleet. She understood how the galactic economy worked. "Captain Vasquez," Park said during a strategy meeting, "we're fighting the wrong battle. The Vorthak and Zephyrians don't care about being right. They care about looking strong. But there are other species watching this fight." Elena looked at the tactical display showing their increasingly desperate situation. "What do you mean?" "The Corellian Republic has been sending observation ships. So have the Proximans and the Deltari. The minor species are watching to see if it's possible to stand up to the major powers." Commander Miller nodded slowly. They're waiting to see if we can actually win. Not win, Park corrected. Survive. If we can hold out long enough for the storm to spread, the whole galaxy will see that the Lumthara were right. Then the major powers will look like fools for attacking the species that tried to save everyone. It was a desperate strategy, but Elena couldn't think of a better one. The human fleet would have to endure a siege while the dark matter storm proved their point for them. The siege stretched into weeks. Elena's ships played a deadly game of survival, using every asteroid and debris field for cover. The Lumthara helped when they could, but their pacifist nature made active warfare difficult for them. The breakthrough came when Dr. Chen and a young Lumthara scientist named Villani discovered something new about the quantum disruption fields. Instead of disabling enemy ships, they could be used to create protective barriers. It's like a shield made of twisted space-time, Chen explained excitedly. The Lumthara can generate bubbles where normal physics work differently. Elena saw the potential immediately. Can they protect our ships during attacks? Better than that, Villani said through the translator. We can protect entire asteroids. Make safe zones where your people and ours can survive even heavy bombardment. The next Vorthak assault met a surprise. Instead of fleeing, human ships took shelter inside shimmering barriers that bent space around them. Plasma cannons and missile strikes seemed to slide around the protected zones like water flowing around stones. Admiral Krekstar's frustration was obvious in his transmissions. What is this witchcraft? Elena almost smiled. It's called science, Admiral. The kind you learn when you actually listen to other species instead of dismissing them. But the quantum barriers came at a cost. Each one required several Lumthara working together, and maintaining them was exhausting. Elena watched Elder Zephi growing weaker each day, pouring life force into keeping the defenses active. The war took another tragic turn when the Vorthak fleet began targeting Lumthara civilians directly. A surprise attack on the agricultural asteroids killed dozens of peaceful farmers whose only crime was existing in a system the major powers wanted to control. Elena felt rage building in her chest. These weren't military targets. They were innocent beings who had never hurt anyone. Admiral Krekstar, Elena transmitted on all frequencies. You're attacking non-combatants. This is a war crime by any civilized standard. They are providing aid to rebels, Krekstar replied coldly. That makes them legitimate targets. Elena realized that some lines, once crossed, could never be uncrossed. The Vorthak had moved from military action to genocide. There would be no negotiating with that. The tide began to turn when the storm reached its second target. The Proxima Centauri system, home to over 2 billion beings, was evacuated just hours before their star became unstable. The evacuation was only possible because Lumthara sensors had predicted exactly when and where the stellar disruption would occur. News of the successful evacuation spread across the galaxy faster than any government could suppress it. The small, dismissed species that everyone called primitive had just saved 2 billion lives. Protests erupted on dozens of worlds. Young Vorthak and Zephyrians demanded to know why their governments were fighting the people who had tried to warn them about the cosmic disaster. Captain Sarah. Torres' sacrifice became a symbol of human determination. Before her death, she had sent a message to her mother that was now being broadcast by rebel networks across the galaxy. Mom, I know you're watching this. I want you to know that dying to protect children is the most human thing I can imagine. If we lose this war, tell people that we tried to do what was right. Elena played that message every night before sleep, finding strength in her daughter's words even as grief threatened to overwhelm her. The siege entered its third month when something unexpected happened. A small fleet of Corellian ships jumped into the system, but instead of joining the attackers, they took position alongside Elena's battered vessels. Captain Vasquez, came the transmission from the lead Corellian ship. I am Commander Velth of the Corellian Republic. We have come to offer assistance to the defenders of the Lumthara. Elena couldn't believe what she was hearing. The Corellians were a minor power, but they had actual military ships and trained crews. Commander Velth, Elena replied, your government will face retaliation from the major powers. Our government has decided, Velth said firmly, that some things are more important than political convenience. The Lumthara tried to save us all. The least we can do is try to save them. Within hours, more ships arrived. Proximan vessels, Deltari frigates, even a small squadron from the usually neutral Andromedans. The minor species of the galaxy were rallying to protect the Lumthara, and by extension, each other. Admiral Krextar found himself facing not just human rebels, but a coalition of species that had decided enough was enough. For the first time in galactic history, the minor powers were standing together against the major ones. The final phase of the battle began when the dark matter storm reached the edge of Vorthak territory. 3 star systems went dark in a single day, their stars poisoned by the cosmic disaster. Billions of Vorthak citizens became refugees overnight. Krexistar received new orders from his government. End the siege immediately and bring all available ships home to help with the evacuation. But by then, it was too late. The coalition fleet had grown large enough to match the Vorthak forces. More importantly, they had something the attackers lacked, the certain knowledge that they were fighting for something worth dying for. Admiral Krextar, Elena transmitted one final time. Elder HFY is still willing to help coordinate the evacuation of your homeworld. The Lumthara don't hold grudges. Krextar's reply came back bitter with irony. The species we called animals are offering to save us from our own stupidity. Yes, Elena said simply. That's exactly what's happening. As the Vorthak fleet prepared to withdraw, Elena looked around at the coalition that had formed to protect a single overlooked species. Humans, Corellians, Proximans, Deltari, and Andromedans, all united by the simple idea that size didn't determine worth. The galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the Battle of Kepler 442, Elena stood on the bridge of the newly constructed starship Harmony. The vessel was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen before. A fusion of human engineering, Lumthara biotechnology, and design principles contributed by every species in the new coalition. Through the view screen, she watched the largest evacuation in galactic history. Thousands of ships moved in coordinated streams carrying refugees from the expanding dark matter storm to safe systems in the galaxy's interior. The evacuation was only possible because the Lumthara had mapped every safe corridor through the cosmic disaster. Admiral Vasquez, came the voice of Commander Velth from the bridge of a Corellian ship. Elena still wasn't used to her new rank, but the coalition fleet had insisted on promoting her. The Rigel evacuation convoy is reporting successful arrival at the New Haven system. Elena nodded. New Haven was one of dozens of refugee settlements being established in the galaxy's core. Unlike the overcrowded camps the major powers had originally planned, these were proper colonies where displaced beings could rebuild their lives with dignity. Dr. Chen joined her at the view screen. He looked older than his years, but his eyes held satisfaction. His translation work with the Lumthara had become the foundation for a new universal communication protocol that allowed all species to understand each other clearly. Elder HFY wants to speak with you, Chen said. The final evacuation numbers are in. Elena nodded and activated the communication system. Elder HFY's image appeared, but the old Lumthara looked much frailer than before. The stress of coordinating the galactic evacuation had pushed HFY to the limits of endurance. Elena Leader, the translation came through. The count is complete. We have successfully evacuated 437 billion beings from the storm's path. Elena felt a mix of triumph and sadness. They had saved nearly 500 billion lives, but the cost had been enormous. Entire civilizations had lost their homeworlds. The Vorthak Empire was a shadow of its former self, with most of their territory now uninhabitable. The Zephyrian Trade Federation had collapsed completely when their commercial networks were disrupted by the cosmic disaster. Elder, Elena said gently, you should rest. You've done more than anyone could have asked. HFY's light patterns showed gentle amusement. Rest comes soon enough, Elena Leader. But first, there is something the Lumthara must do. The old alien gestured, and younger Lumthara began bringing crystalline structures into view. These weren't the sensing crystals Elena had seen before. These were something new, living computers that pulsed with complex mathematical patterns. We give our final gift, HFY explained. The complete star-song knowledge of our people. Everything we have learned about reading the cosmos. We give it freely to all who will listen. Elena realized what she was seeing. The Lumthara were sharing their most precious knowledge with the entire galaxy. Their biological technology, their understanding of quantum mechanics, their ability to sense cosmic threats long before conventional instruments could detect them. Elder, Elena said softly, this is incredibly generous, but what do you want in return? Only this, Zephi replied. That the new galactic concordant remember what almost happened. That size and power do not determine wisdom. That the smallest voice may carry the most important warning. Elena looked around the bridge of the Harmony. Her crew included humans, Corellians, Proximans, Deltari, and even a few reformed Vorthak and Zephyrians who had joined the coalition after seeing the truth. This was what the galaxy could become when beings chose cooperation over domination. The new concordant will remember, Elena promised. The Lumthara will have a permanent seat on the governing council, with full voting rights equal to any other species. Maria Santos approached from the engineering station. The chief engineer had been instrumental in adapting Lumthara biotechnology for use in coalition ships. Admiral, we're receiving reports from the outer monitoring stations. The storm's expansion has stabilized. It's not growing any larger. Elena felt relief wash over her. The dark matter storm would remain a permanent threat to the galaxy's outer rim, but it wouldn't spread further. The core systems were safe, and there was time to develop better defenses for the future. There's more good news, Maria continued. The research teams think they can use Lumthara sensing technology to predict similar threats decades in advance. We'll never be caught off guard like this again. Over the following weeks, Elena watched the new Galactic Concordant take shape. The governing structure was completely different from the old system. Instead of being dominated by military and economic powerhouses, the new council gave equal representation to all species, regardless of size or technological level. The Lumthara became the galaxy's official early warning system, their biological sensors monitoring space-time for any signs of cosmic threats. But more importantly, their example changed how species related to each other. The idea that wisdom could come from unexpected sources became a core principle of the new government. Captain Lisa Park, now in charge of refugee resettlement, brought Elena regular updates on the new colonies. The integration is going better than expected, Park reported. When beings are working together to survive, old prejudices tend to disappear quickly. Elena smiled. Park was right. Vorthak warriors were learning farming techniques from Lumthara agricultural specialists. Zephyrian traders were using Corellian philosophy to develop more ethical business practices. Humans were teaching everyone about the stubborn determination that had made the coalition possible in the first place. Dr. Chen spent his days working with translation teams from dozens of species, developing new ways for very different types of minds to understand each other. His work had revealed that many conflicts in galactic history had been caused by simple communication failures. The Andromedans think in mathematical concepts, Chen explained during one of his reports. The Deltari communicate through chemical markers. The Proximans use collective consciousness. When you really understand how someone else thinks, it becomes much harder to dismiss them as primitive or inferior. Elena found this insight fascinating. The galaxy had spent thousands of years assuming that intelligence only came in one form, the form that looked most like their own species. The Lumthara had taught them that wisdom could emerge from the most unexpected places. As the first anniversary of the Battle of Kepler 442 approached, Elena received a personal message from President Kim on Earth. The woman looked tired but satisfied. Admiral Vasquez, Kim's recorded message began, I wanted you to know that the Earth Council has officially commended your actions. You've been awarded the Order of Terra, our highest honor for service to humanity and galactic peace. Elena appreciated the recognition, but she knew the real heroes were the beings who had given their lives for the cause. Her daughter Sarah, Elder HFY, and thousands of others who had chosen to do what was right instead of what was safe. The memorial service was held in orbit around the main Lumthara colony. Representatives from every species in the coalition attended, along with many from former enemy governments who now understood what they had almost lost. Elena spoke at the ceremony, looking out at an audience that would have been impossible just 2 years earlier. Former enemies standing together to honor shared values. We gather today not just to remember the dead, Elena said, but to celebrate what they died for. The idea that every species, no matter how small or different, has something valuable to contribute to the galaxy. Elder HFY had died peacefully 3 months earlier, finally able to rest after seeing the evacuation completed successfully. But the Lumthara Elder's final words had become the motto of the new concordant. Listen to the small voices, for they may carry the songs of stars. After the ceremony, Elena walked through the Lumthara colony. The Light Weavers had adapted well to their new role as the galaxy's guardians. Young Lumthara trained with beings from other species, learning to share their unique abilities and understand different perspectives on cosmic phenomena. She paused at a memorial garden where crystalline structures grew in patterns that honored those who had died in the war. The crystals sang softly in subsonic frequencies that spoke of loss and hope, and the endless possibility of renewal. As Elena stood there, she thought about how much had changed. The galaxy had come within months of a catastrophe that would have destroyed billions of lives. Only the desperate warnings of a species everyone considered primitive had made survival possible. But more than that, the crisis had revealed something important about intelligence and wisdom. The Lumthara hadn't saved the galaxy because they were more advanced or more powerful than other species. They had saved it because they had learned to listen to the universe itself, to read the subtle signs that others missed or ignored. Elena realized that this was humanity's real contribution to galactic civilization. Not just the stubborn courage to protect the weak, but the wisdom to recognize that strength and size didn't determine worth. Sometimes the most important voices belong to those who seem to have the least power. A young Lumthara approached her, patterns of curiosity dancing under translucent skin. This was Kelvin, who had become the new chief quantum mapper after Zephai's death.